This happened a few months ago. I'm an astrophysicist named Emily, working at a forgotten facility on the edge of a desert town. I've dedicated my life to searching for signs of life in space. I wasn't expecting anything strange when I began analyzing the archived data from the 1976 Mars mission. I was just doing my job, but I never stopped thinking about it. One evening, I sat in my lab, surrounded by old equipment. The hum of machines filled the air as I sifted through the raw data. At first, everything seemed normal. But then I noticed some odd signals. They repeated in a way that caught my attention. I thought maybe this was something significant. As I kept digging, strange things started happening. One night the lights flickered, and equipment buzzed as if reacting to something. I told myself it was just stress. I was working long hours, and it felt silly to be scared by flickering lights. I tried to dismiss it even when I mentioned the signals to my colleagues. They brushed it off, saying, "You're pushing yourself too hard." I wanted to believe them, but the signals kept getting weirder. I sensed a mixture of excitement and dread. I recorded the new patterns, but something felt off. I replayed them, listening for clues. I could almost hear something in those eerie tones, but I couldn't make sense of it. One night, while I stared at the screen, my heart raced. I felt drawn deeper into the data, and then I heard a loud bang behind me. The lights flickered again. I turned around quickly, but there was nobody there. A cold chill ran down my spine. I stood up to leave, but then I saw the screen glitch. Strange symbols appeared. For a moment I felt they might be forming a message. I looked around, uneasy. My colleagues' dismissive words echoed in my mind. Maybe I was losing it. Still, I leaned closer, trying to decipher what the symbols meant. The lights went dark. I felt the weight of unseen eyes on me, but when I turned, no one was there. The silence settled in my stomach like a heavy stone. I took a deep breath and turned back to the screen. The symbols danced in front of me, almost taunting. I didn't know what to do. It felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, peering into a dark abyss. Then, as if responding to my fear, the screen blared a sound, loud and unsettling. I grabbed my chair to steady myself. I felt sweat trickling down my back. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. The whispers I thought I heard earlier grew louder, like a cacophony filling the room. I couldn't tell if they were real or imagined. I was sure they were trying to say something. Suddenly, a tremor shook the lab. Papers flew off my desk. I heard a crash, and the lights blinked back on. All at once, the whispers stopped. Silence enveloped me once again. I felt breathless. I looked around, searching. Nobody was there. But I was not alone. In that moment, I realized I was standing at the precipice of a discovery, one best left undisturbed. I stared at the screen, knowing I would regret what I'd found. What had I unearthed in that data? Right then, surrounded by stillness, I understood I may never know. The next day, I felt a strange weight hanging over me as I arrived at the lab. The silence felt almost oppressive, and the flickering lights from the night before still played in my mind. I had an unease that wouldn't leave me. I needed to focus, to push through whatever fear gripped me. But each time I sat down, my eyes would drift toward the screen. After a deep breath, I decided to dive back into the data. Maybe I could make sense of the symbols I had seen. I pulled up the raw footage from the latest signal recordings. My hands trembled as I pressed play. The audio crackled, and the whispers came back, only this time they seemed clearer, almost demanding my attention. I reached for my recorder, hoping to capture anything I could. I pointed the microphone toward the screen. "Is anyone there?" I whispered, my voice shaking. It felt silly, but something within me yearned for a response. Then, suddenly, the machine interrupted with an urgent warning beep. My heart raced again as I turned my focus back to the screen. The symbols were morphing, shifting into something new. I squinted, trying to see through the flickers. They began to form patterns resembling faces, shifting in and out as if trapped in a digital storm. Whoever, or whatever, was behind it, I feared I was intruding. A sudden chill rushed over me, and I glanced around the lab. The room was still, yet I felt an unsettling presence. It was as if the walls were watching. I dismissed it, telling myself it was just my imagination. But that didn't stop me from feeling exposed, vulnerable. Determined, I hit the pause button. That's when I noticed it. Among the symbols, a series of numbers began to stand out. They were coordinates. My pulse quickened as I recognized them. They pointed to a remote location in the desert, not far from here. I felt a mix of curiosity and dread. What could possibly be there? I grabbed my jacket and stepped outside. The sun poured over the horizon, but it felt muted, like it couldn't reach me. As I drove toward the coordinates, every bump in the road seemed to echo the urgency I felt inside. Why did this place call to me? The landscape shifted from dusty roads to an empty expanse. I parked near a small rise, the ground dry and cracked beneath me. As I climbed to the top, I saw something glinting under the morning sun. My breath caught in my throat. It was metallic, partially buried in the sand. That's when I heard it. A distant hum that almost made the air shimmer around me. My pulse raced. The sound grew louder, surrounding me, and for a moment, I hesitated. What had I stumbled into? An overwhelming urge to turn back washed over me, but I couldn't. I took a deep breath and moved toward the glinting object. I felt drawn to it, seduced by the mystery. What I found there might unravel everything, or lead me further into the unknown. I reached down to brush the sand away. Then everything went dark. When the darkness receded, I felt disoriented. My eyes blinked open and I was sprawled on the ground, the sun now directly overhead. I groaned as I pushed myself up, brushing sand from my clothes. The metallic object lay before me, now fully visible. It was a small disc, about the size of a dinner plate. Ancient-looking symbols covered its surface, much like those I had seen on the screen. I leaned in closer, my heart hammering. The sound that enveloped me earlier had faded, but its faint echo lingered in my mind. Suddenly, a chilling thought struck me. Had I lost consciousness somehow? Had I been out for just moments or longer? I glanced at my watch. It read 3 p.m. It didn't make sense. I spent the morning here. With my stomach knotting in confusion, I shouted into the empty expanse. "Hello? Is anyone there?" No answer. I dropped my head, frustration boiling over. All I had were questions. What was this object? Why was it here? I carefully reached out and touched the disc. It hummed, vibrating softly beneath my fingers. It felt alive, almost as if it was responding to my touch. A familiar unease crept back in. I hastily withdrew my hand, feeling both drawn to it and terrified. I looked around, half expecting someone, or something, to emerge from the sands. There was only silence, stretching endlessly around me. Just then my phone vibrated violently in my pocket. I yanked it out, surprised to see a message from the lab. "We received a disturbing signal. Come back, urgent." My breath hitched. The lab had been quiet. Now, something must have happened while I was gone. Glancing back at the disc, I hesitated. If I reported this find, would they dismiss it, or would they believe me? What if this was tied to whatever signal they had detected? My instincts screamed to take the disc with me. The need to know urged me to dig deeper, but the fear of its implications also paralyzed me. I opted to take a picture first. I angled my phone and snapped a few shots of the disc, capturing every detail of the symbols. Just as I was about to leave, a noise cut through the stillness. It was faint, a soft scraping sound, as if something was moving. My heart dropped. I turned slowly, scanning the area. There was nothing, just the swirling sands around me. "Hello," I called out again, and this time, I couldn't mask the tremor in my voice. Then came the sound again, closer this time. I could feel my breath quicken. I took a step back, my eyes darting over the terrain. The disc's hum intensified, vibrating deeper now, as if it sensed the disturbance. And that's when I saw it. A shadow darted past, just beyond the rise, elusive and quick. My pulse raced as I swiveled in the direction of the movement. Whatever it was watching. With a pounding heart, I bolted toward my car, clutching my phone tightly. I could hear the echoes of whispered voices in the distance as I ran. They penetrated my thoughts, paralyzing and insistent. I stumbled but kept going, my mind fixated on the disc and its chilling connection to the unknown. Would I make it back to the lab with the answers I needed, or was I already too far gone? I sprinted toward my car, panic driving each step. The whispers persisted, soft yet urgent, threading themselves through my thoughts. I fumbled with the keys in my pocket, my fingers shaking. I had to get out of here. As I reached my vehicle, I threw the door open and jumped inside. I slammed the door shut, locking it in a hurry. My heart raced, and I struggled to catch my breath. I quickly glanced around to see if anything had followed me. The silence was deafening, and for a brief moment I thought I had escaped whatever shadow lurked in the dunes. I started the engine and threw the car into gear, speeding away from the sight that now felt like a trap. The symbols on the disc danced in my mind, as if pleading for attention. It was maddening. I needed to focus on driving, but every glance in the rearview mirror filled me with dread. I hit the main road and let out a shaky sigh, grateful for the open space ahead. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. There was no other traffic, no signs of life. Where was everyone? I turned on the radio to drown out the whispers. Static filled the air and I twisted the dial hoping for a clear signal. Then a voice broke through the noise. "Unexplained phenomena. Call immediately." I jolted at the sound, realizing it was a news bulletin discussing strange occurrences in the area. My heart sank. Was this connected to what I found? Were other people experiencing the same unsettling signals? Almost without thinking, I grabbed my phone. I couldn't just sit helplessly. I had to know more. I thought about calling the lab, but then something caught my eye in the distance. A figure stood near the road, half hidden behind a cluster of rocks. My stomach twisted. The person looked familiar, but I couldn't place them. As I approached, I slowed to a stop, feeling a mix of hope and terror. "Is that?" I shouted, but the figure didn't respond. A wave of unease washed over me. Something was off. Their heads snapped up, and for an instant, I locked eyes with them. It was Ethan, my colleague, but he looked different, disheveled and almost ghostly. I opened the door, ready to jump out despite my instincts screaming at me to keep driving. "Ethan, what are you doing out here?" He didn't answer. Instead, he slowly stepped closer, his gaze fixed on something behind me. I felt a chill run down my spine as he pointed, trembling. "You have to get away. They know you have it." Before I could react, a loud crash echoed from behind me. I swung around, heart pounding in my chest. The shadows from the dunes began to shift, moving in unison. My breath hitched. Something was coming. I looked back at Ethan, but he had vanished. The nerves in my gut coiled tighter. I made a split-second decision and threw the car into reverse, prepared to flee. Then everything went dark. I gasped as consciousness returned, my heart pounding. I blinked against the darkness, disoriented. The engine idled, but everything else felt eerily still. It took me a moment to process that I had crashed. My car was overturned, and the air smelled like smoke mixed with something sharp. I struggled to unbuckle my seatbelt, my body throbbing from the impact. There was no sign of the shifting shadows or Ethan, just darkness and silence. I breathed heavily, forcing my eyes to adjust. I looked around the car, my heart sinking as I realized I was alone. Panic grew as I pushed against the door. It was jammed, and I could feel the weight of the vehicle pressing on the ground. I banged on the window, but no sound escaped. I needed to get out. I twisted and turned, trying to move toward the back seat. Finally, the rear door creaked open, and a beam of light broke through the shadows. I crawled out into the dark, gritty sand and stumbled to my feet. Wincing, I scanned my surroundings, searching for any sign of life. The stars twinkled above me, but I didn't feel reassured. The silence remained oppressive, as though the world itself was holding its breath. Then, I heard it. A soft whispering that made the hair on my neck stand up. It came from all around me. I turned, looking for the source, but only saw the darkness stretching endlessly in every direction. "Ethan!" I called, hoping against hope that he'd respond. Nothing. I took a shaky step forward, the whispers growing louder. "Stop, please," I shouted, my voice cracking. I had to find my phone. If I could just call for help. That thought flickered in my mind like a failing bulb as I rummaged through my pockets. I found it, but the screen was cracked, the display flickering erratically. I tried to dial my lab's number, but the static filled the air instead, mixing with the whispers. My chest tightened. I felt like I was being pulled into the abyss. Suddenly, a flash of light cut through the darkness. I turned to see a figure emerging from the shadows. My breath caught in my throat. It was Ethan again, but this time he looked more urgent, frantic even. "Get away from here," he shouted, his voice shaky. "They're coming for you." Before I could question him, the ground beneath me trembled. I could see figures moving in the dark, gliding with unnatural speed. Shapes emerged, shifting like clouds, yet they seemed to coalesce into something more substantial. The shadows of the dunes loomed closer, and I felt my pulse race. "How?" I whispered, fear pulsing through me. "What do they want?" His eyes widened, and for the first time I saw terror reflected in his face. "It's the signals. You're not safe." Just then, something shifted behind him. I stumbled backward, my feet sinking into the soft earth. "Ethan!" A blinding light surged forward, illuminating everything in its path. That's when I saw it. I stared, frozen, as the light washed over the terrain. It revealed a massive, sprawling machine, half buried in the sand. Metal plates glinted under the illumination, and strange alien symbols decorated its surface. My breath quickened. This wasn't just any wreck. It was the same craft the scientists had studied from satellite images decades ago. "What is that?" I managed to choke out, my voice barely breaking the silence. Ethan didn't answer. He was looking past me, eyes wide with horror. The whispering grew louder, more insistent. I felt a wave of dread wash over me. Something was coming. I could sense it, pressing at the edges of reality. "Ethan, what do we do?" I urged, desperate for direction. "They don't like to be disturbed," he stammered, glancing back at the machine. "We have to." Before he could finish, a shadow swooped down from above. I flinched, instinctively ducking as I turned to see a dark form gliding through the air. It was like nothing I had ever seen, long and sinewy, with a face that shifted and morphed with every heartbeat. "Get back!" Ethan shouted. "Run!" I didn't need to be told twice. My legs felt like lead as I took off, the whispers escalating to a scream in my ears. I glanced behind me, seeing Ethan racing alongside. But even as I ran, a part of me was captivated by the machine. There was something about it that called to me. It pulsated with energy, as if it had a heartbeat of its own. "Why did you come back?" Ethan yelled, his voice strained. "You shouldn't have come here." "Had no choice," I shot back, my lungs burning. "We need to regroup." The shadows seemed to morph around us, flowing like water. I could feel their presence, an unseen force closing in. Up ahead, I spotted a bluff with a jagged outcrop. We surged toward it, the machine fading behind us, the whispers dying but replaced by the thundering rush of adrenaline. Reaching the rocky shelter, we ducked behind the stones panting, searching for a moment of clarity. The dark shape hovered just outside our view, a palpable menace in the environment. I pressed my back against the cool stone, stealing a glance over the edge. And that's when I saw it again, the machine pulsing, a beacon in the night. But a darkness unfurled from it, spreading like smoke, tendrils reaching out toward us. I felt a chill, realization dawning. "It's not just a craft," I breathed. "It's alive." Ethan glanced at me, a shadow of panic in his eyes. "If it's alive, then it understands us." Suddenly, a sharp flicker of light sliced through the air, aimed right at us, and I knew we were out of time. "Run!" I screamed, pushing away from the rock. There was no room for doubt now. I had to find answers, but first, we had to survive. As we fled, the shadows closed in behind us, their whispers now a cacophony intent on driving us into despair. I could hear them saying something familiar. Or was it a warning? All I knew was they wouldn't stop. Not until they found what they were looking for, and they were looking for me. My heart pounded as we ran, the sound of our footsteps swallowed by the desert's vast silence. The darkness pressed against me, a living thing eager to drag us back. I didn't know where we were going, but we had to move. It was either that, or let the shadows catch us. "Ethan," I gasped, glancing over my shoulder. "Where do we go from here?" He paused just long enough to catch his breath, his face pale. "There's a canyon to the east. We can lose them among the rocks." I nodded, pushing forward again. The whispers had receded, but I could feel a heaviness in the air. It was as if the very environment was dense with a kind of fear, feeding off our own. An ounce of desperation fueled my legs, making them move faster as I fought against the instinct to look back. We rounded a large boulder, and out of the corner of my eye, I caught a flicker of movement. Something was lurking behind it. I froze, my breath catching. "Did you see that?" Ethan shook his head, urging me to continue. "Keep moving." We pressed on, but every instinct told me something was watching us. The shadows felt alive, forming shapes that twisted and morphed outside my vision. Dread pooled in my stomach, and I fought to block it out. We needed to focus on the canyon. Finally, we crested a small rise and saw the canyon below, a narrow gap that seemed to swallow the fading light. My mind raced with images of dark tunnels and crumbling walls, but it was our only option. "Let's go," I called out, pushing Ethan ahead. As we skittered down the slope, an eerie hush enveloped us. It felt wrong. The air was too still, too quiet. We reached the edge of the canyon and stepped inside, the walls hugging us close and shrouding us in darkness. "Can you hear that?" Ethan whispered. I concentrated, straining to pick up a sound. There it was again. A low humming, like a distant engine. Fear licked at my thoughts again, but curiosity held me captive. "It sounds like it's coming from deeper in," I said. Before Ethan could advise against it, I pressed onward, drawn by the sound. We moved cautiously, our footsteps echoing in the narrow passage. The humming grew louder, vibrating through the stones. I felt an odd pull, almost like a magnet amidst the debris of the canyon walls. As we advanced, the ground beneath us began to pulse. I stumbled, nearly losing my balance. "What's happening?" Ethan gasped beside me. Before I could answer, the ground erupted around us. A bright flash lit up the canyon, and for a moment, I could see everything: the jagged rock walls, the glint of something metallic embedded in the soil. Then, it all went dark. I blinked away the spots in my vision, panic flooding my chest. "Ethan, are you okay?" No response. My heart raced as I scrambled to where I last saw him, feeling the air grow heavy again, thick with the presence of something unseen. The proximity of danger pressed in all around me. Just then, I noticed something shiny on the ground. I knelt down and picked it up. It was cold, smooth, like metal but not. It pulsed gently in my hand. My breath caught. In the dimness, I could just make out Ethan's silhouette, his figure rigid, staring in the opposite direction. "Ethan?" I called, the tremor in my voice betraying my fear. He turned slowly, eyes wide. "You need to see this." My heart sank as I followed his gaze. That's when I saw it. The walls of the canyon were shifting, and deep within the rock something ancient stirred, awakening from a long slumber. I felt an unsettling certainty wash over me. We were not alone. The canyon walls seemed to breathe around us, the shifting rock creating deep shadows that twisted uncertainly. I gripped the strange metallic object in my hand tighter, its pulse matching the erratic beat of my heart. Ethan stood rooted to the spot, eyes fixed on whatever lurked beyond. "What is that?" I whispered, my voice barely breaking the tense silence. "It looks like some kind of symbol," he replied, taking a careful step forward. As he moved, I felt a pull, urging me to follow him. "It's glowing, too." Tentatively, I stepped closer. The air felt electric, crackling with a strange energy. I squinted, trying to see what Ethan saw. The symbols etched into the canyon wall were unfamiliar. They had a peculiar elegance, sharp angles and flowing curves that sent a shiver down my spine. "What does it mean?" I asked, feeling the weight of our predicament settle heavily on my shoulders. I don't know, Ethan said, his gaze darting as he leaned closer. But it feels important, like it's connected to whatever just happened to us. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the canyon. I froze again, every hair on my body standing on end. The sound reverberated off the walls, increasing in volume. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my feet felt glued to the ground. "We need to get out of here," I said, urgency rising in my voice. "Wait!" Ethan snapped. "Look!" He pointed towards the source of the noise. In the shadows, a dark figure emerged, half hidden behind the rock formation. It was tall and humanoid, but something was off. Its features were too indistinct, too fluid. Before I could think, I turned and ran. My pulse thundered in my ears as I called out, "Ethan, follow me!" We plunged deeper into the canyon, adrenaline pushing us forward. The humming sound was back, almost like it was guiding us. I didn't want to be guided, but it felt impossible to ignore. The walls began to close in around us, the passage narrowing. I stumbled over loose rocks, every scrape against my palms sharp and painful. Ethan was right beside me, his breath coming in quick bursts. "What is chasing us?" he gasped, fear tinging his words. "I don't know, but we can't stop," I shouted. The air grew colder, swirling with an otherworldly chill that made me shudder. I wanted to glance back, but a deep-rooted instinct told me not to. Finally, after what felt like hours, we reached an opening. The canyon opened up into a wider area, illuminated by the same eerie glow that emitted from the walls. I paused, gasping for air. "What now?" Ethan scanned the surroundings, eyes darting with a mix of awe and terror. "We're still not safe. We have to find another way out." As we searched for a path, the ground began to tremble. I felt my stomach drop. Was it the creature? "Ethan, we need to move." That's when something from the far end of the chamber caught my eye. A shimmering portal-like structure, its edges pulsating rhythmically as if it were alive. I felt that same magnetic pull again. "That's it. That's our way out," I exclaimed, pointing. "I don't know. It could be dangerous," Ethan warned, his voice shaky. But I didn't have time to think. I plunged forward, drawn to the shimmering light. Behind me, I could hear the growl intensifying, echoing ominously. "Ethan, hurry!" Just as we reached the portal, the shadows behind us lunged. I felt a rush of wind whip through the opening. With a final push, I grabbed Ethan's hand and together we leapt into the unknown. As we crossed the threshold, everything went white. Then everything went quiet. The bright white light faded slowly, giving way to a pale blue hue that washed over us. I blinked hard, trying to adjust my eyes. Where were we? I took a tentative step forward, feeling the ground beneath my feet shift slightly. "Ethan?" I called out, my voice sounding eerily small in the vast space around us. When I turned to check on him, I saw that he was beside me, looking equally disoriented. "What just happened?" he asked, his expression a mixture of confusion and fear. "I think we crossed through that portal," I replied, taking a moment to scan our surroundings. We were in what looked like a vast, open landscape, but it was unlike anything I had ever seen. The ground shimmered underfoot, resembling a smooth, glass-like surface that reflected the strange blue light above us. And then I felt it, the same electric pulse that had resonated with the metallic object in my hand. It surged through the air, more intense here, almost alive. "This doesn't feel right," Ethan muttered. He eyed the horizon, where jagged mountains pierced the sky. Their forms twisted and turned at unnatural angles, like something out of a dream. Suddenly, a series of sharp echoing sounds broke the stillness. It was a rhythmic signal, resonating in waves that made the ground vibrate beneath us. "What is that?" I asked, alarmed. Ethan looked back at me, concern etched across his features. I don't know. But it doesn't sound friendly." Panic bubbled inside me. "We should move." We started to walk, keeping close together as the eerie sound intensified. The landscape shifted as we moved, the shimmering ground reflecting images that danced like shadows. Flashes of what looked like the canyon filled my vision, mixed with scenes of strange iridescent creatures flitting above the surface. Are those memories? I wondered aloud, feeling a strange sense of familiarity wash over me. Ethan frowned. Or maybe it's showing us what lies ahead. Just as the thought settled in, the ground trembled, and a piercing roar echoed through the air. Whatever it is, it's getting closer, I shouted, heart racing. The signal morphed into a chaotic cacophony, competing with the roar. Overwhelmed, I stopped in my tracks, glancing around for any signs of escape. That's when I saw it. A faint outline in the distance. A structure, rising from the shimmering landscape, towering high like a sentinel. "Ethan, look over there," I pointed, desperate for direction. We dashed toward the structure, bolstered by a renewed urgency. The roar reverberated again, closer now, as if something large was moving through the ground toward us. As we reached the base of the structure, I noticed intricate symbols carved into its surface, the same symbols I had seen back in the canyon. It was as if we had come full circle. "Ethan, we need to figure out how to get inside. It might be our only chance." He nodded, pulling on the solid door at the base, but it wouldn't budge. "Help me." Just then, I turned around to scan for any signs of our pursuer, but the sight that met me sent chills through my spine. Shadows twisted and elongated against the shimmering surface, and in the distance I could see eyes, dozens of them, focused intently on us. "We're not alone," I whispered, my voice barely audible. Then, just as I felt like we were trapped, I noticed the door began to glow in response to the pulsing energy in the air. "Ethan, look!" Before I could finish, the door swung open with a deep rumble, inviting us into the darkness beyond. "Go!" I shouted, pushing Ethan ahead of me. We entered just as the ground quaked violently, and a sudden silence fell, leaving us with only the sound of our quickened breaths. Then everything went dark again. When the darkness lifted, I found myself in a narrow corridor illuminated by soft, pulsating lights. Everything felt surreal, like stepping into the core of a living entity. Ethan stood beside me, wide-eyed, taking in the unusual surroundings. The walls undulated gently, almost breathing, pulsating in time with the same vibrations I had felt before. "What is this place?" he whispered, his voice reverberating through the air. "I have no idea," I replied, my heart pounding. "But it feels connected to everything we've experienced." We cautiously stepped forward, unsure of what we would find. The hum reverberated through the floor beneath our feet, as if it recognized us, as if it was alive and aware of our presence. Shapes darted past behind the glass-like walls, shadowy forms that we could not fully see but felt all around us. I felt the whispers surge up again, thrumming with urgency. "Keep moving," I said, feeling the gravity of the moment press down on us. We pushed deeper into the structure, the corridor opening into a vast chamber. The centerpiece was a massive orb, hovering just above the ground. It pulsed with colors I had never seen before, swirling patterns of energy that flickered and danced. "Ethan," I said, entranced. "Look at it." He stepped closer to the orb and I followed, feeling the pull of its energy. "We need to record this," I mumbled, pulling out my phone, but the screen flickered and went dark. Panic bubbled in my stomach as I glanced back, half expecting to see shadows closing in. "It's okay," Ethan reassured me. "We can—" Before he could finish, the orb emitted a deep sound, resonating with an intensity that rattled the very air around us. Suddenly, images flooded my mind, visions of the past intertwined with feelings of despair and hope. I felt my knees buckle, and I grabbed a nearby support beam to steady myself. "What's happening?" Ethan shouted, looking around frantically. The orb glowed even brighter, the air thickening as if the room were collapsing in on itself. I could hear cries and laughter interspersed with the whispers. The entity inside the orb was revealing something, but I couldn't comprehend it all. Then, clarity cut through the chaos. I felt a surge of understanding wash over me. The signals we had received, the echoes from the canyon, the disk buried in the sand. It all connected to this moment in the center of a universe far larger than I ever dared to imagine. "Emily!" Ethan's voice brought me back, the urgency breaking through the haze. "We have to get out of here. Now!" I nodded, breaking free of the orb's grasp as we sprinted through the corridor. The whispers followed, oscillating between panic and knowledge. "It doesn't want us to leave," I called back. With determination, we raced toward the chamber's exit. The walls trembled in reaction to our fear, shadows darting closer, a mass of darkness that sought to ensnare us. Just as the exit came into focus, a massive shadow lunged from behind, and I barely glimpsed its shape, a glimmer of alien terror before I felt Ethan's hand grasp my wrist. "Run!" he shouted, throwing us both through the doorway just as the shadows surged forward. We stumbled into the open air outside the structure, the vibrations fading behind us. Panting, we collapsed on the ground, surrounded by the desolate landscape. The orb loomed in the distance, pulsing rhythmically against the darkening sky. "We made it," I gasped, but something felt off. The darkness of the shadows still lingered at the edges of my thoughts. I took a deep breath, looking into Ethan's eyes, but saw a flicker of something else there. Doubt and fear intertwined now with resilience. "Where do we go from here?" I asked, my heart racing with adrenaline, fear, and an odd sense of purpose. Ethan glanced back toward the structure as it began to fade into the dunes, uncertain yet somehow resolved. "We go back. We have to figure out what we unleashed." And in that moment, I felt the weight of the unknown settle over me again. I had stepped into something larger than myself, and as we turned away from the strange, now hidden craft, I realized we had survived the immediate danger. But the lingering questions would follow us. What had we awakened? What were the true implications of the connection we discovered? And would we ever discover the truth behind the signals? I looked at the horizon, where the last remnants of light faded into darkness, a reminder that some answers lie beyond the reach of our understanding. "I don't know," I finally said, feeling the enormity of what lay ahead. We walked back toward the road, the shadows still lingering from the otherworldly experience, uncertain of what we'd left behind or what awaited us in the future. But one thing was for sure. We were not alone in seeking the truth, whatever it might be.